Everywhere I go, Kansas tell me they're ready to move on. I'm ready to move
I'm
on.
not.
No,
I understand
no.
you're not. So I think I'm definitely ready to move on. We've spent 2 years, $30 million. It's time to move on. I can't get any work done if all Nancy Pelosi wants to do is to create obstruction and
So
do
no
this. So after
oversight,
2 years,
is what you're saying.
after 2 years, Mueller report said there was no obstruction. It's time to move on.
No oversight. Is that what I'm hearing?
I answered the question.
I guess you did.
My question is this. Your statement is that you feel the United States is more secure. Could you tell us how you feel that we're more secure now than 2 years ago?
Absolutely, in many, many ways. I think, let's take North Korea, for instance. So North Korea is certainly quieter today. They're no longer testing missiles that are threats to us. I think that our military is much stronger as well. So we fully funded the military for the first time in probably some 8 or 9 years. So the military is in a position of power, a strength, I should say. The military is in a much better position of strength. Next, I would talk about NATO. I think it's great that based upon the President's insistence is that the other countries that are part of NATO are paying more of their fair share. So that's a stronger relationship as well. So I think those are 3 examples. I think that as long as our economy is stronger, that's always going to be good for national security as well. I think our southern border is more secure today than it was 2 years ago as well, 3 years ago, but we have a lot more work to go.
How much contact have you had with farmers regarding how much money they have lost since the tariff enhancement with the Chinese?
Certainly a lot of contact. We probably have done 125, 130 town halls since I became congressman 3 years ago. We've done hundreds of round tables. I'm invested in agriculture myself, so it's hard to not understand what's going on. And I would just share a quick story with you. When I was asked to go to the White House a couple weeks ago and talk about health care, when I sat down beside the president, and I was told we'd have 10 minutes to talk about health care, the first thing he said is, "Roger, how are your farmers doing?" And I said, "Mr. President, they're not doing well. We're really struggling." And we talked for 20 minutes about agriculture, and he said, "Thanks to the farmers for being patriots, for getting us through this." And he promised that we were weeks away from a major announcement with China. I feel the pain. I saw the price of sorghum drop $1 a bushel overnight almost 2 years ago as the first retaliation on tariffs. So I get it. Agriculture is hurting, and that's why I'm working so hard to get NAFTA 2.0, the USMCA agreement, through, as well as pushing the president on China, the European Union, and Japan. So I get it, and I'm working at it. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
So, President Trump fired James Comey. He ordered the special counsel fired by Don McGahn to refuse. He repeatedly attacked Jeff Sessions, unrecused himself from overseeing the Russia investigation. Do you think that President Trump attempted to obstruct justice even if he wasn't successful in doing so?
No, I don't. I think there was no obstruction, there was no collusion, and I'm ready to move on. Yes, sir.
You say the economy is doing better, but which I guess what I'm trying to say is it better for the rich people and the big business people, or are you talking about the middle and the lower class, and even in the state of Kansas? What are you doing to help the middle and the lower class? This new quote W-4 that's coming out that begins next year. What's the benefit of that? I know that it came out of this new lower the taxes, let's give tax breaks. But has anybody really thought that one through? I mean, what are you doing to help the state of Kansas in its economy?
Certainly making the economy stronger is my top objective. So the average Kansan is keeping $2,200 more of their hard-earned money. So that's great for all Kansans. Unemployment is down, so there's lots of people that didn't have jobs 3 years ago that are now employed. Wages are growing as well. Wages are growing significantly at this point. So I think those are all great things for the middle and lower classes as well. Driving down the cost of healthcare is something I'm working on very hard. One of the major concern of small businesses is the cost of healthcare, and that's something the Affordable Care Act did not address, was the cost of healthcare. So driving the cost of healthcare down will help people keep more money in their pockets as well. As far as Kansas go, more specifically trade. Trade is what I've been working on to help grow this economy. 40% of my district economy is related to agriculture, perhaps more than that. So I've been working on trade.
So, I know that you've been considering possibly running for the U.S. Senate seat in 2020. Haven't made a decision on that yet?
No, I've not made a decision on it yet. I'm plenty busy as I am right now. I want to stay focused on getting USMCA through. I want to focus on implementing the Farm Bill, an immigration reform policy, a major infrastructure plan. So I can't run for Senate at the same time I'm doing those. So no, I've not made a final decision. I'm going to stay locked into my job at hand. Certainly giving it very serious consideration, and certainly getting a nice warm reception across the state.
What are you doing to reduce the horrific gun violence in America?
Yeah, we passed several pieces of legislation to address the situation. It was called the Nix Fix legislation, and it did a couple of things. Number one is it allocated more monies to help schools become safer, but it also improved the efficiency of the gun background check. The system is still not working well, that we're not enforcing the laws that we do have in place. So those are the two biggest things that I think I can point to.
And what about reducing the number of guns available to people?
Yeah, so I'm going to stand by the Second Amendment, stand up strong to protect it. I encourage more efficient use of the background checks, and that's what I would emphasize. I think that the bigger issue is probably mental health, and we've allocated some $10 billion in the last Congress to help improve the mental health outreach programs that we have across the country.
What about all the veterans who also believe that general public shouldn't have military-grade weapons?
I'm not aware of that, but I'm not going to let anyone take down our Second Amendment. I'm going to protect it.
I don't think she was asking for a repeal of the Second Amendment. She was asking a very specific question about a military-grade automatic weapon, and even in its iteration that it's sold to the public in, that has shown repeatedly to be at ground zero in mass shootings. And she's asking specifically about what you plan to do about a weapon that's been identified as a problem. She's not talking about widespread suppression of buying a lot of weapons. She's talking about a specific weapon. And she's saying that there's some support among people that have awareness of the responsibilities that go with handing that weapon that say that it's not a good idea. So I'm going to ask you again, do you have any consideration for reducing the access to automatic weapons, which have been shown to be particularly destructive in mass shootings?
Automatic weapons are already illegal, so there don't need to be any changes. We just need to enforce the laws that we have.
Then how do you think those people got those weapons that did shootings in places like Las Vegas?
All of those places.
Nevada, and school shootings. So how do you think they got those weapons?
I think those were semi-automatic weapons. I don't think they were automatic.
Okay, so let's not be semantic. What's the problem with reducing access to those weapons?
I think I've already answered that question, so I'm ready to move on.
So you're not interested in it?
I've answered the question.
Thank you.
Sir, so when you recently voted nay to the Violence Against Women Reauthorization Act of 2019, how does that further security in America? And when you talk about security in America, does that include women?
Of course, I'm concerned about protecting women. I'm often.
So why did you vote nay to that one? Can you explain your thought process?
I will if you'll give me a chance to. Certainly as an obstetrician gynecologist, I was on the front line of seeing women who suffered from violence, and for years I've helped reach out to them, help set up safe homes, those types of things. So I certainly understand the problem. I also voted in favor of renewing another piece of legislation that would have done a better job of protecting women. So of course Nancy Pelosi had to put a poison pill on that legislation. If she would have done a bipartisan piece of legislation, I would have supported it. So I supported the traditional protection of it. So the reason I voted against it is it had some poison pills in it. A couple of things that I didn't like about it. Number one is it would encourage the woman that was beaten up to have to face her perpetrator in court, face to face. So I think that that was a bad idea. Number two is it allowed a guy who thought he was a girl to be in prison with other women. So that I think that that's wrong. So she purposely put poison pills in this to try to embarrass Republicans. So there was purposeful poison pills in it.
So you're going to throw the baby out with the bathwater, right?
No, I
Because there
voted
was a
for
couple
I
things you
voted
didn't
for a
like,
piece.
you're
I
gonna-
voted for a legislation the same day that would have actually taken care of the whole problem. So sometimes I chose the better legislation is what I chose to vote for.
You said it would cause women to have to face their accusers. Shouldn't that be our choice? If we want to face our accusers?
Yeah, it should be, but you
we
shouldn't be
should get
made to do
that.
it. You shouldn't be made to do it.
You
And that's
used
what
the
the
word
legislation would have done.
encouraged, but it encouraged it. It didn't seem to make it.
I changed up the topic just a little bit. High school special education teacher at Salina South High School, and I work pretty closely with what our budgets are doing in our public schools. Over the last few years, IDEA, the special education law, passed at the federal level. In 2004 has failed to meet the funding that's been required, which has made districts make really tough choices. They're taking money from their general funds and they're putting it into special ed funds. Can we see any movement towards getting the federal government to live up to the promises on IDA to fund our public schools and our children that need it the most?
You know, certainly you're not the first person to talk to me about the issue. I certainly understand it. I don't have a solution today for you. I don't see us changing a lot at the federal level. Again, there just seems like there's no oxygen left in the room if everybody wants to just talk about Russia. I don't think the federal government's going to be able to solve the problem either. So certainly acknowledge the problem. I don't have a solution for you today. Yep.
So I know one thing that you've been working on for a while is getting an agricultural guest worker visa. I know immigration has been a particularly thorny issue in recent years. Any progress on that?
Yeah, not much. Again, there's a theme here, is that the appropriate committees, like would be the Judiciary Committee, we need to do a lot of work on that. And Mr. Nadler is very focused on Russia mania right now. So he's not allowing anybody to work on those types of problems. Behind the scenes, I continue to talk to other congressmen and women about the situation. There's a little flicker of light, but not much.
Roger, can you tell us how you're doing on your committees and what the focus is for the next quarter?
Yeah. So I sit on two committees, Science-Based Technology and the Ag Committee. On the Ag Committee, the focus is trade, and the implementation of the Farm Bill. On the Science-Based Technology Committee, I actually the ranking member on the Environment Subcommittee. So of course we're getting a lot of the climate change concerns coming through that committee, trying to study the science, separate the science from the emotion of all of it. But to be frank, again, there's just not much happening in those committees because where everyone is locked in on Russia. I say everyone. The chairmen of the committees are focused in on bringing in all the president's folks and barbecuing them.
So I was appalled by the fact that our military budget went up. And I heard you say that we don't have money for IDEA. We don't have money to do other things that would help ordinary Americans. What's your position on the military budget?
I think right now it's exactly where it needs to be. I think that we are trying to catch up from the past decade of not fully funding the military, so I'm very comfortable with where the budget is today on it.
Yeah, my question is that you seem to be interested in moving on a lot, and you're concerned that there are people who are concerned about Russia. Why is it you're not concerned about Russia's involvement in our elections in the past? And what do you propose that we do when the news story learned that the Russians had a serious effort to affect an election and have plans to affect elections in the future. Why should we just turn a blind eye to that? Why are we moving on from that? Why doesn't that concern you? Whatever party you're from.
Okay, absolutely, Russia interfering with our elections concerns me, and that should have been the focus of what we've been doing the past 2 years. Instead, the focus has been on how can we defame President Trump. That's what the focus has been.
I'm asking about the future.
So they turned it into a political conversation.
I'm not asking about them, I'm asking about you. Why are you not concerned about Russia?
I am concerned about Russia, and we've already passed legislation to address it. So we passed before the last election. We spent millions of dollars and went out to all the election, offered every election committee across the country opportunities to improve their defense from hacking, those types of things. So we did try to address
Do
it.
you think our work is done?
Of course not.
Well, then why
Our
should we
work
move on?
our work is never done.
Why should we move on?
I think we need to move on from trying to, on the issue of obstruction and collusion with the president. I think it's time to move on from that instead of making this a political issue to turn on to the real issue.
I don't disagree with you there, but I think we shouldn't turn our back on what Russia continues to plan to do.
I agree.
I think it continues to be an important focus for this.
Russia has been meddling in our elections for decades, and they're going to continue.
For us to stop being interested now.
I never said that. I said we should move on from the obstruction concerns. That's been proven that there was no obstruction, there was no collusion. It's time to move
I
on.
don't think anybody in the room has even asked about obstruction. We're talking about Russia.
I think several people have. So
Nope. I don't believe I've heard one question on obstruction. We talked about it.
yes, sir.
How has the current goings on with the immigration process, or lack of process, or confusion, or whatever, how is that affecting the state of Kansas to your knowledge?
Well, we have 70,000 jobs in Kansas that are dependent upon an agriculture guest worker visa of some type. 70,000. We have about 3,000 DACA recipients right now that are in limbo, and their families as well. So I think it's if we have all these open jobs in Kansas right now, having an agriculture guest worker visa will help solve part of that problem as well. So that's how I think it's impacting us.
So has that been put on hold? I mean, is that really intruding right now in the workforce potential? The current policies? I mean, you just said you think we would have the ability to have enough workers, but are they not free to work now?
We literally don't have enough people for the jobs that we have open right now.
So you're saying,
So we need an agriculture policy that would be more efficient and allow more agriculture guest worker visas. That's the problem. And we had legislation to fix it. We voted on it twice last Congress. We came within 30 or 40 votes of passing it. And also had funding, $25 billion for the wall, but we couldn't get it across the finish line.
We heard you say that you have no idea how they might get more funds for special ed. And yet, 25 billion you wanted to spend on a wall. 25 billion would go a long way towards funding special ed. And do you have any other ideas on how to get some money from these other problems or sources of funding, sources where we're spending billions of dollars on a new boosted military, on a new wall at the Mexican border, and maybe move a little bit of them over to special ed, which is not that expensive compared to many of the other programs we have.
Yeah, I think my job as a congressman is always to try to prioritize where we should spend the money and where we're spending it to spend it efficiently. I think the best investment I could have done with American dollars is the $5.5 billion for the wall that the president asked for. I think that it was a great investment. It would have prevented drugs from coming into this country, as well as criminals as well, which is costing this country $50 billion a year, perhaps more. So I think that's a good investment. Your point's taken. My job is to try to prioritize things. I was just being realistic. I don't see people that being funded more at this time.
Maybe you could work on it.
That'd be great.
Where is it, Trump, when he was running for president, said he was going to get Mexico to step up with the wall. Okay? Canada, for some reason, keeps their people, so we don't have the northern problem. Why is it we don't push back to Mexico to have them help on their part to keep the southern wall better, so we don't have to spend so much money building a wall?
I think that's what President Trump has tried to do. I think he's pushing back pretty hard right now again. And a lot of the people that are coming into the country, most of the people coming in today are coming in from Central America. They're traversing through Mexico. So I think he is putting more and more pressure on Mexico to do that. That would be our goal. We have the same goal and objective, but it's easier said than done. Canada does not have people from Central America going through their country trying to get in here at this time.
Where are we with the cost of reduction of pharmaceutical drugs for patients and our families and here in the United States? And maybe some of the pharmaceuticals could help our education department.
Sure. Certainly that's been an emphasis of legislation I tried to push.
You tried to push, okay.
Absolutely. And when I was at the White House recently, I was talking with President Trump about the cost of health care. That's always one of the issues that comes up. One thing that we have accomplished, we're now getting twice the number of generic drugs approved every year compared to the Obama administration. So that's allowing more competition and help driving the cost of healthcare down. The big challenge right now is dealing with pharmacy benefit managers. So pharmacy benefit managers give legal kickbacks to both big pharma and insurance companies. So the legislation that I'm proposing and the president would support is transparency to show the American consumer that where those kickbacks are happening. And then eventually we need to make those kickbacks illegal, or at least drive them to the patient themselves. Unfortunately, in Congress, like in the 1990s, passed legislations to make these kickbacks legal. It's the only industry in the country that allows kickbacks to happen. So those are about a few examples. We got time for one more question.
Do you have a substitute for your medical practice while you're gone, and have you any interest in returning back to that?
We did hire somebody before I left. I do have interest in returning as a physician, probably not in the setting where I'm running the hospital, running the practice, the business side of it. I miss delivering babies, but I'm very comfortable doing what I'm doing right now. I feel very comfortable in my own skin. I think this is what I'm supposed to be doing today. All right.
Nobody's mentioned the terrible problem of climate change and conserving our water, particularly here in Kansas. We have looming problems. What is going on in Congress to change things?
Certainly, I do believe the climate's changing. It's been changing since the beginning of time. It's now changing faster than things can adapt to it. Most recently, what we've been studying is oceans and how CO2 is reabsorbed by the plankton in the ocean. And because of the increased temperature of the ocean, it's making the water more acidic. The carbon gases are more soluble in the water, and the phytoplankton, which absorbed about 2/3 of the CO2 or carbon gases in the world, are absorbed in the ocean. So we're trying to figure out what's going on there. What can we do to promote more plankton, actually to farm it, those types of things. I think I'm very proud that since 2003, the carbon footprint that America's leaving is going down. So I think that's a great thing. Let's keep going in that direction. But the climate change issue is a worldwide issue. And I think that we need to put pressure on other countries to start following some of the practices that we've already been doing.
And we should rejoin the Paris Accord?
Absolutely not. We're the only ones. We're one of the few countries in that accord that are actually doing what we said we would do. The other countries join the accord and they don't follow their own rules. So I think we need to, as a country, be focused on driving down our carbon footprint, and other countries need to be doing it as well. Signing an agreement like that, I don't see that it has any substance or any teeth to it.
Then why have you rolled back regulations?
Thank you.
Thank you very much for being
safe travels. You bet, absolutely. We're going to take a quick break real quick, and then we'll get started with our Kansas legislators.
Thank you, thanks for coming. I appreciate the question. Thank you for coming.